Herkese merhaba, hoş geldiniz. Ee, Öncelikle bu etkinliğin İngilizce, Türkçe ve Portekizce olmak üzere 3 dilde yapıldığını hatırlatmak isterim. Eğer dinlemek istediğiniz dili aşağıda çevirme kısmında, çeviri kısmında seçebilirsiniz. E, istediğiniz dili seçtikten sonra isterseniz e, orijinal sesi kapatı tercih ederek tek dilde dinleyebilirsiniz. So welcome to our webinar, European Municipalities and Agroecology-based short food supply chains, organized by Buğday Association for Supporting Ecological Living from Turkey and K-Evolution from Portugal, as part of the Transforming the Local Food System in Istanbul and Setúbal with Local Authorities project, implemented within the framework of the PLACE program managed jointly by ALDA and MAD, funded by Stiftung Mercator. My name is Didar Kalafat. I am the project coordinator on the Turkish side. We're very happy to see you today. Our general objective with this project is to contribute to the transformation and improvement of local agroecological short food supply chains in Istanbul and Setúbal, together with local authorities. We aim to increase awareness in local authorities in agroecological production and short food supply chains, and to put these issues on their agenda in order to promote a circular economy with this project. Today, we are joined with 4 speakers and also our project partner from Portugal, K-Evolution, Alexandra. And she would also like to say a few words and welcome you. So now I'm giving the floor to Alexandra.
Olá a todos, muito boa tarde para os portugueses, que é a hora de almoço. É muito bom estar aqui e ver aqui uma plateia cheia. Somos cerca de 120 neste momento e espero que estejamos todos aqui em conjunto para transformar o sistema de alimentação local em Istambul e em Setúbal com as autoridades locais. Portanto, é muito bom fazer parte deste evento em conjunto com a Associação Buğday. E será muito, esperemos que seja uma partilha de boas práticas para todos integrarmos e também haver aqui espaço para alguma partilha. Então, desejo boa sorte a todos e até já.
Thank you, Alexandra. As part of the project, we want to showcase some of the best practices from European municipalities on how local authorities can contribute to agroecological short food supply chains. Today, we have 4 speakers with us from 4 different European cities. Helen Nilsson from the city of Malmö, Carla Kulgar from Bordeaux Metropole, Antonio Carlos Duarte from Aruca Municipality, and Bettina Bergman Madsen from the city of Copenhagen, who will all tell us different perspectives and practices that their respective municipalities have adopted for their agro-food systems. We will accept the questions after all the presentations. You can use the raise your hand button to ask your questions verbally or submit them in writing from the Q&A session of the webinar controls at the bottom of the screen. Our first speaker is Helen Nilsson from the city of Malmö. She is an environmental scientist and project manager who works strategically with projects focusing on sustainable food and urban greening. She will talk about Malmö's journey to sustainable school food. Welcome, Helen. Thank you for joining us today. And
thank you very much.
Yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen. See if I can get this to work. So it's jumped into the, hang on, just let me get. want to jump to the end of the presentation. So can everyone see that okay? Yes, I see nodding. Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you today about Malmö's journey to sustainable school food. And as we have a lot of public sector catering in Sweden, that is an area that we've worked on an awful lot. And my contact information is there, my email, so you are welcome to contact me after the webinar if you have any questions that aren't covered in the webinar on the presentation. So what am I going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about our policy that we've had in place for sustainable development of food, its goals and the results that we've gained from the policy, and also how we've worked towards our goals and the problems we've had along the way, and future challenges that we're going to have to face. And if you want more information about Malmö's work, there's a link here in the presentation which you're welcome to follow. It's in English as well. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about public sector food in Sweden. So according to Sweden's Education Act, it's a legal requirement that schools provide a warm, nutritionally balanced meal at lunchtime for all school children, which means that at every school in Sweden at lunchtime, each child will get a warm, nutritionally balanced meal. And almost all high school students also receive a tax-financed school lunch as well. There are a few, less than 5%, I think it is, of high schools that actually charge students for a meal, but otherwise it's all tax financed as well. In addition, municipalities also provide hot lunches, breakfasts and snacks for preschool children, and also subsidised meals for residents of elderly care homes. The government has set a target of organic food in public sector catering, and the goal is 60% by 2030. And the current level for the whole of Sweden is at the moment about 43%, but it's stagnating. As we're all aware, there are a number of challenges in the food sector at the moment, and that is an issue, I think, which all municipalities and public sector caterers are facing. So if we focus more on Malmö, Malmö is a municipality in southern Sweden. Some of you might know it from the TV series The Bridge. We're on the other side from Copenhagen, and it's a population of about 350,000 people from 186 different countries. So it's a diverse city and municipality. We procure over 6,000 tons of food every year at a value of about 25 million euros. So we do procure quite a lot of food. And we have over 700 delivery points, and we serve over 60,000 lunches a day. So that's for our schools, our preschools, and our elderly care homes. In addition to that, after school care, sports centres also provide food, as well as the tea, coffee and fruit for municipal staff. So there was a lot of food, and it was understood that it was something that we needed to focus on. But let me take you back to the beginning, before our policy. So already in 2006, the school restaurants who are responsible providing all the food in the schools in Malmö, already they had a vision. They wanted to serve organic food in schools in Malmö. And they used the opportunity when it came up that a school called Avrupa'daki was having their kitchen remodeled. This is a newspaper article from the time. And they wanted to see basically if it was feasible, if it was practical, if it was basically doable to have 100% organic being served in a school kitchen. And this was back in 2006. So there wasn't as many products on the market as there are today. And what they managed to do, they managed to have 97% of organic without increasing their budget and with keeping within their procurement agreements, which was an amazing result. But how did they do this, you're thinking? Well, they cooked the vast majority of their food from scratch. So instead of buying in ready-made burgers, things like that, they made everything from scratch. They used their leftovers, obviously things that hadn't left the kitchen. They were very flexible when it came to menu planning. Excuse me. In addition to that, they had a very committed and enthusiastic staff. And I think that is one of the important things that we found in our work during the years is you need to have the staff on board when you're working on these things. Excuse me. So 2010, Malmö got its policy for sustainable development and food. It was approved by the executive committee of the municipality in October 2010. And the main aim of the policy was that we wanted to serve healthy food of a high quality in our public sector in Malmö. And to be able to do this, you need to have staff that have both skills and the knowledge to be able to prepare and serve this food. And also you need to think about what sort of products you're procuring. So we wanted to choose both organic and fair trade products. And we also had to think about our procurement agreements to make sure that we were financially sustainable as well when we were doing this. And in addition, it was also important for us to be able to promote this work at official events and also dinners where Malmö was represented. So also follow the path of the policy and follow the goals and the aims of the policy when we're serving food. So the first goal, so that was the big aim, was to improve the quality of the food, but we had two major goals. And the first goal was that by 2020, all food that is served or procured by the city of Malmö should be certified organic. And we chose that because it is actually something that you can measure. And we have the European logo for organic food there. And then also we have the Swedish logo there on the left, Krav. And we didn't write 100% because we thought that was a very finite number and it would be a shame to say that we missed the target if we only got 99%. So what we decided instead was say all food. And then the executive committee made an executive decision that all would be the same as 90%, so 90. And the reason they chose that was that there are some products that just aren't available as organic, especially when it comes to specialized diets for those who are maybe gluten intolerant or have severe allergies, that you can't make food. There aren't organic products. So therefore, it was decided that it would be 90% would be the same as all. And 2020, the whole of the city was on 70%, 70, which we were really pleased with. No, we didn't reach our goal for the whole city, but we reached 70%. And this was without increasing the budget anywhere. We were given additional funding to fund training and education for staff, but nothing more for the budget for buying food. And the school restaurants who provide all the school food, they actually reached the target of 90%, which was amazing. Next major goal was we wanted to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from the food consumption by 40% from the 2002 level. We chose 2002 as this was the first year we actually had measurements of our greenhouse gas emissions. So that was our base year, because that's when we first could measure. And we chose 40% because in our then environmental program that Malmö then had a goal of reducing its greenhouse gas emissions by 40%. So therefore, we wanted to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from food consumption as well by 40% by 2002. So how did we do? Well, I think we did quite well. We actually reduced by 30%. So we both increased our organic and we reduced our greenhouse gas emissions. So we did really well, keeping within our budget. And also the school restaurants actually did decrease their greenhouse gas emissions by 40%. So it varied between the different departments within the municipality, but the whole municipality reduced it by 30%. So we think we did a really good job. So how did we do this? Well, the important success factors that we had, we set up really clear aims. We worked really hard at the beginning, basically writing an elevator pitch so that when someone could ask us, what were we doing? Why were we working on this? What was our goals? What were our aims? Instead of trying to explain everything and talking about sustainability and greenhouse gas emissions and why it was important to focus on organic, we just were very clear and concise. We want to improve the quality of the food, and we want to improve the levels of skills and knowledge of the staff. And we want to, so these were sort of the main areas, and we want to improve the organic, increase organic, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we were very clear and concise. So that was a really important thing that we learned in the beginning, that you had to be really clear. We also had dedicated leadership. The policy itself was initiated by senior municipal staff as well as politicians, and they ensured that we had support so that it would pass through the executive committee and it would be supported. So that was really important, that senior management were on board and wanted to do this. We understood from the beginning, we set ourselves a 10-year timeline. So when it was taken in 2010, we set goals for 2020 because we knew that we wouldn't be able to do things overnight. We didn't have a big pot of money that we'd be able to use to make all these big changes. We had to do it all within budget. As I said, we only had additional funding for education and training for staff. So what was really important for us was that it was an acceptance that things would take time, and to set small goals along the way and know that we would have to be patient. And it was quite frustrating sometimes when you might be go 2 or 3 years and not really notice much of a change, but you would then suddenly notice a change. So it took a couple of years for the ideas to settle with staff and for them to sink in, and then suddenly they'd understand and start implementing change, and then suddenly you'd see changes in the amount of organic food, for example, that was being procured. Staff were interested and engaged, and I think it was one of the really interesting or the important things that we did was the education, engaging with the staff and talking to them about why it was important, why we needed to make these changes, so to increase their knowledge and understanding of the situation and why we wanted to make these changes, to get them on board and get them engaged. And it worked really well. Another thing that we learned was it's important to test new dishes multiple times. You can't just change a menu overnight and expect everyone to accept it, especially when you're serving children and young people. So often, for example, in the school restaurants, they very rarely just serve one. Well, they never serve just one menu option. There was at least 2, if not 3. So often they would make a small batch of a new recipe and serve it as almost like a side dish, so people could try it, or the children could try it and see what they thought of it. And then if it was seen popular, that they could then increase it and send it out to other schools. So maybe 1 or 2 schools would try a dish, and then if it was popular, it would spread to the recipe would spread to other schools. And another success factor that we had a very close dialogue with our suppliers, especially in the beginning when we were trying to source more organic products and they just weren't there. It was important to work with our suppliers because they had to suddenly start looking for products they hadn't normally looked before, as well when we wanted more plant-based products. So we've had to work closely with them, and that's been really important and very valuable. So it's not all been plain sailing, obviously. You can't make these sorts of changes without some sort of conflict, even if we've tried to take things gradually. Staff question, why do we have to make these changes? So there's lots of discussions. You might get, for example, the catering staff on board, but then the teaching staff aren't on board. So there's conflict there. Keeping to the budget, keeping to agreements is always been challenging, especially when products haven't been available. So that's been something that we've had to work on. And as I say, finding suppliers hasn't always been easy. Especially in the beginning of the process. It's got a lot better now. It's got a lot easier now, as there is a larger variety of organic products, for example, available. There is a larger variety of plant-based products available. So it's getting a lot easier, but in the beginning, it was very difficult. Getting the schools on board, convincing teaching staff that this is a good thing, convincing the staff in the preschools that it's a good thing. This has all been difficult, and it's led to conflicts in the canteens. So you could get teachers in the preschools saying that they don't like the food in front of the children, which obviously influences the children, which then means that none of the children eat the food if the teacher doesn't like it. So there's been lots of difficulties. And we've tried to solve those with, well, the staff at the schools have tried to solve that with dialogue. To try and sort things out. There's been unhappy parents. It's not so much been the children who've been complaining, it's been more the parents that complain. But this was more in the beginning, I think, of the process. The last couple of years, there's been, or even before the pandemic, they noticed that there's been a reduction in the number of complaints or the number of complaining parents about the changes in the food. Because there is more plant-based food being served, there is less meat being served. So there are some people complaining, but the complaints are less and less, because I think we've noticed there's an increase in consciousness, I think, in the general public about how we do need to change our diet, how we do need to make changes, and the reasons we need to make changes. So there's less opposition now than there was before, but there's obviously still some opposition. We've had fractious politicians. We've had politicians complaining in the media saying that we're trying to serve protein-free meals in schools just because we're reducing the amount of meat, which is frustrating and obviously incorrect, as the food has to be nutritionally balanced. So if the meat is reduced, the nutritionists employed by the municipality ensure that there is enough protein and trace elements, etc., that's needed in the meals. So, but there has been some sensational coverage as well. So it's not all been plain sailing, but we're getting there. So finally, challenges for the future. We've come a long way, but we've still got an awful long way to go. I think it's always the way. You set these goals and you almost get these goals or even reach goals, but then in the work, in the process, you realize there's still so much more to do. So we haven't really touched on food waste very much. Obviously, it's been something that the schools have looked at to try and reduce by reducing the size of the cantinas that go out to serving, and to try and reduce the amount that's thrown away in the kitchens and that sort of thing. But that's another thing that we need to work on. We also need to work more on connecting the urban and the rural. And what I mean by that is kind of linked to the second one as well, securing the supply of more local organic products. Malmö is a big municipality, Swedish standards, and we do procure a lot of food. So it's difficult for local suppliers, who often could be small scale, to actually compete in procurement agreements with us, because they just can't produce the volume that we need. So to help us connect to our rural area, because even though we're a city, we do still have a lot of farmland around us. We are looking to see how in our procurement agreements, we can have breakout procurement agreements with smaller producers, so that we can bring in more local produce to connect the local and the rural. We still need more commitment from directors and head teachers. It's always a way. We've got a project running at the moment here called School Food for Change, where we're linking up directly with schools to try and get more schools on board to understand why we're making these changes and working directly with the schools. It's a constant work to gain acceptance from the customers for menu changes. As I say, in preschools, it's often not a problem. And it's often more the elderly and maybe the older teenagers that have issues, but it's always a challenge because we need to make changes to make sure that we reach our targets. And also our policy or our goals for 2020. And we're still waiting for our politicians here in Malmö to decide what form the next document should take, if it should be a policy, if it should be a strategy, if it should be a plan. They haven't actually told us yet. So we are still waiting and hoping that we will soon be given the task of producing something new. So I think that was 20 minutes. I hope that was 20 minutes. I'm going to stop sharing. I apologise for my blocked up nose. I'm recovering from a cold. So
no worries. Thank you very much. This was a very inspiring and a very illuminating presentation. It was very inspiring because you told us how municipalities can create an all-encompassing program considering all the factors. But it was illuminating because you also told us about all the challenges you face and you have been facing, especially the human factor from all the sides. So thank you so much. This was very interesting.
Thank you.
We will take all the questions at the end. I'd like to remind again. You can submit your questions in written form down below, or you can wait until the end for the Q&A session. So our second speaker today is Carla Kuviger. I apologize if I'm pronouncing any of the names badly. She is from the Bordeaux Metropole, and she has been a food officer in Bordeaux Metropole for a year. As part of a 5-person team, she is in charge of the implementation of the food policy actions and coordinations of the stakeholders in the Food Policy Council. Today, she will talk about how Bordeaux Metropole's food policy, thanks to its local council, contributes to a local food system that is more sustainable. Welcome, Carla. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So I will share my presentation. Up. Everyone's seeing it? Okay. Yes, perfect. So thank you for the invitation. It's difficult for my name, so it's okay. I'm a food officer in Bordeaux Metropole for over a year. And as you already said, I'm part of a 5-person team, so I'm not alone on this subject, and we work on the implementation of the food policy actions. So I will talk a little bit about what is Bordeaux Metropole, because it's not that easy. So Bordeaux Metropole is an area in France, in the southwest of France, here, from one of the 22 metropolitan area in France. Metropolitan area means that you have more than 200,000 people in the area. So Bordeaux Metropole is an administrative group of 28 municipalities in the same living area. You can see in the map that Bordeaux is the city is in the middle. It's really administrative. It really manages mutualized local public services such as waste, water, transport, etc., and also leads urban plan at the metropolitan scale and metropolitan strategies such as economic strategy, environmental strategy. We have 800,000 inhabitants, and it represents more than 57,000 hectares. What is Bordeaux Metropole is known for? So Mostly the city of Bordeaux is known for the historical heritage. We are part of the UNESCO, the waterway tourism through the river Gironde, and obviously the wine, like the wine, and also if you came in France, you maybe hate some pastry, which the name is cannoli, and it's from the Bordeaux area. We also have a lot of natural and agricultural land. It represents more than 50% of the surface, and yeah, it's quite nice to go around the area. So the agriculture context of the area, we have 10% of agricultural land with 20% of organic land, 148 farms. We have more wine farms with water farms and field crop farms. We saw over the years the loss of some hectares in agriculture because of urbanism mostly, but also we regain in new spaces because we have really political objective to maintain farms in the area. Some key indicators about the food system. We have a big wholesale market localized in the city center with 50 through the wholesale market per year. We also have a lot of collective canteens because they have 28 municipalities and all the municipalities have canteen. So we have like 65,000 meals per day in collective catering with around 20% of organic food. But it's quite different between the municipalities. We have like municipalities with 60% of organic food and also some with only 10%. We have a lot of permanent markets and some indicators about food aid were quite alarming with 22,000 people per week who are going to food aid in the area. So yeah, we have a lot of agriculture and food stake at local level, mostly about maintaining and developing more sustainable farms, working on food procurement, optimize the local food logistic, the need to access to local sustainable food for all, reducing food waste, promoting local and sustainable food, climate change adaptation. We work a lot also on local governance and the cooperation with other territories. So Bordeaux Metropole is involved in the food question for a lot of years. We signed the Milan Pact in 2016. We launched our Food Policy Council in 2017. So we have the Food Policy Council for 5 years now. We voted an agriculture policy in 2018, but it was not really linked to the food policy. It was only about maintaining farms. And in 2020, we became one of the 11 pilot cities in a European project, which is food trade. And we'll talk a little bit about food trade just after that. And it was really helpful for us to really go further on the food policy. In 2021, because of change in the political bodies in Bordeaux Metropole, they really want to have strengthen their action about agriculture and food policy. So we start to work on the consultation to build the food policy. We voted the food policy in 2022, so in November last year. And and this year, in January, we became one official local food system food project, recognized by the government, because the government work also on the developing of local food projects in France. So the food trace project is, you can see on the map, the 11 cities who are part of the project. So Bettina, who will be present to you after me, I think in the end of the session, is also part of the project. And so yeah, the purpose is to build a local stakeholders network, building a food policy, implementing pilot action, and yeah, working on investment, advocacy, and sharing all the good initiatives we can have on food policy. The building of the food strategy was really important for us. We really want to constrict and consult all the stakeholders at local level. So yeah, a lot of stakeholders were involved, elected representatives from Bordeaux Metropole, but also the municipalities. the officers from the municipalities and Bordeaux Métropole, agriculture and food stakeholders from the Food Policy Council, neighbors territory, so all the area around Bordeaux Métropole, and institutional partners. We have 3 big steps, one about diagnosis, one about consultation, and the formalization before the vote. The purpose was really to give visibility on the action for the Bordeaux Métropole and really doing food policy. We have more than 400 stakeholders involved in building the food policy. It took us 1.5 years to create it. We have 12 political objectives, 45 action, and a budget was increased by 1 million euros. So the 12 objectives are there. We want to work on maintaining farms, supporting the development of sustainable farms, working with the wholesale markets to improve the support for local farmers, creating new short supply chains, reducing food carbon footprint, working on sustainable public access to healthy food for all, reducing food waste, promoting local and sustainable food, working with neighbors area, working on food networks from local to international levels. And the purpose also is to talk about food issues, not only on the food policy, but at all the metropolitan policies. So the action plan is for 5 years, from this year to 2027. We have a budget and a calendar. You can see all the axes for the action, one about agriculture, supply chain, public catering, education, and healthy food for all. The roles of the metropole are different between the action. Mostly we have coordination. We work a lot of coordination between the stakeholders and this kind of thing. We do a lot of funding on local initiative, facilitation, and also we can implement action directly with the food team. I will not describe all the food action plan because it's quite big, but to give you some example, on agriculture, we have financial support to farmers. We really work on protecting agricultural lands and on the transmission of farms to the next generation, because it's a really big stake in France currently. On local supply chain, we want to decarbonize the food logistic and also maybe creating processing units for vegetables and fruits at local level. For public catering, we want to organize training on sustainable food. The metropole is not in charge of the canteen mostly, the municipalities are. So we really want to help the municipalities to achieve sustainable public procurements. So we really want to help them to write sustainable public procurements and reduce food waste. But the LCs, we don't have the competency on social affairs. So we really work mostly about funding local initiative and also corporate level. And we also want to work on education for all the citizens and also in schools. And one aspect also is about connecting the rural environmental and the farmers to the city. I will talk a little bit about the Food Policy Council. So the history is quite long. We start to think about it in 2014. We launched the Food Policy Council 5 years ago. We have 2 years of action. And then we did an assessment of the Food Policy Council in 2020. And the result was the need of pursuing the action and the necessity to give an explicit role of the Food Policy Council. Thanks to their involvement on building the food policy, we really have a strong and efficient food policy for the objective. And currently they became the official food policy council for the agriculture and food resilience strategy. So they really have to help us to orientate and implement the food policy. There are 5 roles for the Food Policy Council, mostly about federating stakeholders, raise awareness, support the development of local initiative, monitor and assess regional performance, and participate in public policy procedures. The members of the Food Policy Councils are split in different groups from 5 colleges. One is about public policies, so we have municipalities, public institutions, researchers, this kind of stakeholders. One is the agricultural community, so mostly farmers and farming organization. One is about food processing, and the last group is about actors defending eaters' interest and supporting food consumption evolutions. We have around 300 stakeholders involved in the Food Policy Council. We have NGOs, cities, public bodies, companies, representatives, etc. And we only have 100 signatories because we have a charters who give the goals of the Food Policy Council, and we ask to every stakeholders involved in the food policy to sign the charter, but not all of them did that. So we have 100 signatories, and you can see the partition between the colleges. For the food policy governance, we have the Food Policy Council, who really are the partners body. So really the networks who help us to design the food policy. But obviously the vote is the political bodies from Bordeaux Metropole, so the Metropolitan Council, who are in charge of the final decisions. And I'm part of the food team. So we help us to pilot and design the food policy with my colleagues from other offices, because we have a lot of offices who are involved with us in the food policy. For example, the economical development affairs and the waste officers as well. So yeah, we have a lot of evolution on the food policy in 2023. We changed the name and the statutes in January because to have an easiest name. So now it's only Agriculture and Food Policy Council, easier than before. And we did an election in March to decide who will be the new stakeholders representative. We compose the new decision body for the Food Policy Council, and we start to implement some operational workshops on food scarcity, collective catering with the members of the Food Policy Council. And for the last, I want to show you Policy Council. So it's really in a group of few people elected by all the moment help us to implement the action. So in the group 1 with public policies, we have 4 municipalities by the 28th of the municipalities, 1 research partners and 5 public services. In the group 2, we have 2 farmers and 2 farming organizations. In food processing, we have 2 collective catering and one representative of organic markets, 1 group of buyers for social markets, and 1 economical food distributor. And for the 5th group, with mostly NGOs, we have 1 organization targeting food waste, 1 about food democracy, and 1 about food education. So yeah, if you want to learn more about Bordeaux Metropole food policy, we was interviewed by Eurocities, the network of cities in Europe. I think it was in December last year. So yeah, we talk a lot about our food policy. So you can find this article if you want to learn more about us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carla. This was so eye-opening to see what it takes to create a systematic food policy that includes all the different stakeholders. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us today. We have a speaker now from Portugal, Antonio Carlos Duarte. Again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing any names. Councillor responsible for the environment, urban planning, forestry, rural development, and entrepreneurship from Aruca Municipality. He will talk about the Aruca Geopark as a UNESCO World Geopark, and he is also World Geoparks Evaluator for UNESCO. Welcome, Antonio. Thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours if you're ready.
Sim, muito boa tarde a todos. Antes de mais, queria agradecer o convite que foi endereçado ao projeto Aruca Agrícola. O meu nome é António Duarte e eu trabalho na área do desenvolvimento local já há alguns anos. Trabalhei principalmente num grupo de ação local durante 10 anos e depois também, sensivelmente, outros 10 na gestão do Geoparque Aruca. E atualmente exerço funções no município de Aruca, na área do ambiente e do desenvolvimento rural. Tenho aqui também esta responsabilidade de acompanhar o projeto Aruca Agrícola, que é um projeto que eu vou aqui explicar. E vou passar aqui a minha apresentação. Não sei se conseguem, se está tudo ok com a apresentação, certo? Pronto, o projeto Aruca Agrícola é um projeto, é uma iniciativa local, uma iniciativa municipal, que está a ser gerida há alguns anos num território que fica muito próximo da região do Porto, em Portugal, muito perto do Porto, e integra a área metropolitana do Porto. A área metropolitana do Porto tem 17 municípios, mas Arouca é um desses, é a sudeste desta área metropolitana, mas numa zona de montanha, numa zona rural. Embora esteja muito próximo do centro urbano, que é o Porto, está numa zona de montanha, muito próximo deste aglomerado, desta metrópole, que é a área metropolitana do Porto, a qual integra. Só explicar aqui uma situação também geográfica, que é o Arouca tem 22 mil habitantes e 328 quilómetros quadrados. Não é um território muito pequenino, para um município é bastante grande, e tem, como eu disse, uns 22 mil habitantes nesta área territorial. É um território classificado pela Unesco como Geoparque Mundial da Unesco, devido às suas características e aos seus geossítios de interesse geológico de relevância internacional, que foram classificados. Então este território passou a ser um território Unesco ao abrigo do novo programa de 2015 dos Geoparques Mundiais da Unesco, do qual o Arouca Geoparque integra desde 2009 a rede mundial de geoparques. Isto para explicar que há aqui uma preocupação com a valorização da identidade geográfica, da identidade e da cultura local, mas também de todos os sistemas agroalimentares também locais. E o setor agrícola é um setor em Arouca que tem uma área significativa, ou pelo menos foi durante muitos anos um dos principais motores do desenvolvimento da Arouca, que hoje é um pouco diferente, mas que tem e integra um conjunto riquíssimo de património agroalimentar, e que tem uma área muito verde, são cerca de mais de 80% do território é florestal, numa área florestal de montanha, onde a agricultura nos vales ainda persiste e se faz. Não tanto da perspectiva intensiva, tenta-se colmatar estas alterações com uma agricultura mais de proximidade e uma agricultura ainda assente em meios e práticas tradicionais, mas que nós temos problemas de escoamento. O problema de escoar os produtos era um problema que tínhamos vindo a identificar até 2000, pelo menos no início da década de 2000, conseguimos verificar que havia dificuldades em escoar e colocar os produtos de base local no mercado, e havia necessidade de estimular aqui uma cadeia curta de comercialização. O que nós fizemos foi estimular a produção e o consumo de produtos locais junto dos consumidores, não é? Também tentar criar aqui alguns postos de trabalho relacionados com esta pequena fileira da agricultura, no fundo manter e criar alguns, combater o abandono das terras, porque assistimos as pessoas tendencialmente abandonavam as suas culturas, valorizar e preservar o património vegetal tradicional, aquilo que já eram as práticas tradicionais, mas também contribuir para a preservação deste património alimentar da região, que é muito rico em algumas receitas tradicionais, mas também incentivar, paralelamente, a que haja alguns novos produtores. Se por um lado temos excedentes, por outro lado também precisamos de alguma excedentes naquilo que é os frutos e alguma alimentação de hortícolas, mas também precisamos de novos produtores para substituir aqueles que eventualmente se desistem, mas também novas formas de trabalhar, com as novas, principalmente assente em modos de produção biológica ou até de modo mais tradicional, mas que isto contribua para a preservação das paisagens também. E a fixação de pessoas a nível local. Contribui também para o aumento da coesão territorial e contribui para a preservação do ecossistema geral. Ainda aumentar a sustentabilidade do setor e que como é que iríamos trabalhar isto? Era trabalhar aqui em parcerias com algumas escolas, com os restaurantes e com as entidades do setor social e também aquelas em que o setor público estaria minimamente incluído, mas também assistimos desde 2009 e principalmente a partir de 2015, de forma mais acelerada, a um conjunto significativo de aumento de procura turística neste território devido à designação da Unesco e dos investimentos que têm sido feitos na qualificação da visitação turística deste território. Por isso, trabalhamos aqui então na lógica de trabalhar a questão da produção, da distribuição e, obviamente, do consumo. Temos de trabalhar nestas três áreas. E o que é que fizemos? Criamos, então, um pequeno projeto com um conjunto de técnicos, de corpo técnico especializado, que também recorre, até pontualmente, também a apoio externo, mas temos um gabinete de coordenação do projeto, que contém 2 técnicos, e que faz a animação do projeto e que paralelamente também gera uma pequena loja de produtos locais. Nós o que fazemos é o apoio técnico e formação, damos apoio técnico e formação aos agricultores e aos produtores, ajudamos na gestão da sementeira e das plantações, apoiamos no escoamento do produto, a tentar colocar no mercado e por via deste pequeno mercado local, que é uma loja local que foi criada com o apoio do município. Fazemos a inclusão de produtos locais, tentamos que eles apareçam, estes produtos, na alimentação do território de forma mais consistente, e consciencializar, isto muito importante, a questão da educação do consumidor para a produção local e o consumo local. Por isso estimulamos a adesão de uma marca própria, que é o Agroecological, e que os produtores aderentes, através de uma entidade, que é a Associação Geoparque Arouca, de quais eles estabelecem um protocolo, usam a marca e podem, desde que tenham uma atividade minimamente fiscalmente reconhecida, possam comercializar e vender os seus produtos. E assim o Agroecological compra os produtos e revende os produtos. Na prática, cria aqui quase uma cooperativa de produtos de base local para ajudar nessa distribuição e fomentar o consumo local, numa cadeia curta de comercialização. Para além desta ser mais curta, é trabalhar a qualidade dos produtos e trabalhar naquilo que é a gestão das sementeiras e a gestão das práticas. Por isso, em simultâneo, trabalhar as práticas mais sustentáveis e simultaneamente tentar ajudar a que não estejam todos a produzir o mesmo produto, mas que haja uma diversificação dos produtos e que recuperem algumas práticas ancestrais, como é as grow, o pão, mas também outras atividades já transformadas, que também temos produtores de produtos já transformados. Bom, nós conseguimos com isto ter 67 produtores em Arouca, 55 produtores de hortícolas, 12 produtores de hortícolas e frutícolas, e alguns aqui destes também produzem produtos transformados. Estamos a falar dos vinhos, estamos a falar da broa, estamos a falar de algumas bolachas e alguns bolos. Depois destes todos, nós temos 6 também já a produzir em modo de produção biológica. Isto é uma transformação muito lenta, porque as pessoas demoram o seu tempo a consciencializar-se para estas novas práticas, e temos neste momento um agricultor que está em conversão, em período de conversão. Por isso temos sensivelmente mais de 10% dos produtores, dos quais temos uma ligação direta sobre a marca Arouca Agrícola, que já produzem em modo de produção biológica, mas demoram o seu tempo. O que é que temos feito para ajudar também à visibilidade do projeto e ao sentido de pertença também ao projeto e ao sentido de pertença também desta área geográfica? Fazemos também ao nível da produção algumas visitas turísticas e educativas às explorações agrícolas que temos vindo a fazer, mas também fazemos verificação das práticas na produção. No fundo, o que nós fazemos é tecnicamente verificar se as pessoas também, como é que estão a fazer. Damos o apoio à gestão das sementeiras e ao combate das pragas, ajudamos na implementação de um plano de formação para os produtores, no fundo, dar-lhes formação ao longo da vida e ao longo de todo o percurso. Não são muitas formações, mas sempre 2 ou 3 por ano, ações de formação essenciais em áreas do diagnóstico que foi previamente efetuado. Depois damos algum incentivo à melhoria das práticas agrícolas, ao desenvolvimento da agricultura biológica, isto é, acompanhamento para alguns subsídios que possam haver e ajudamos no encaminhamento. Este incentivo é o apoio que está a ser trabalhado também no âmbito de um regulamento municipal que prevê, mas ainda não está aprovado, apoio a quem esteja na produção, um apoio direto a quem esteja por áreas de terreno dedicadas à agricultura biológica. Isto vai ser um novo apoio que vamos constituir, esta parte do incentivo direto, mas para já há um incentivo indireto, que é encontrar sítios para se financiar através dos fundos comunitários de apoio. Mas o município quer criar um pequeno regulamento para apoiar a quem esteja na agricultura biológica, e já iniciou o processo, mas ainda não concluiu o regulamento, para poder apoiar diretamente o apoio à certificação. No fundo é apoiar os custos da certificação. Não são grandes custos, mas são custos significativos para quem é pequeno e quer dar o primeiro passo. Depois damos a formação teórico-prática em contexto. Em técnicas de compostagem, por exemplo, para apoiar aqui a economia circular, o modo de produção biológico e na gestão, por exemplo, das pragas e das doenças. Mas também em poda e enxertia, é como trabalhar aqui estas questões de uma agricultura mais produtiva, mas sempre na lógica da sustentabilidade. Ao nível da distribuição, temos então, como eu disse, uma pequena loja comercial, que foi um espaço cedido pelo município, que permite ter, como podem verificar, um conjunto de produtos num pequeno mercado, que não aparece aqui o nome dos produtores, mas aparece a marca apenas Arouca Agrícola. Aparece aqui o conjunto da oferta por produto e neste momento não por produtor. Não quer dizer que não vem, isto é a granel, é a compra ao quilo, mas não quer dizer que num futuro próximo não venha a haver alguns produtos só do produtor. com o rótulo do produtor, aqueles que queiram ter. Temos isso nos produtos transformados. Nos produtos transformados temos a possibilidade de ter o rótulo dos produtores. Durante a pandemia e durante o Covid, nós fizemos muitas entregas ao domicílio, através de cabazes, de modo que depois também mantivemos o nível e esta oferta de produtos de proximidade entregues ao domicílio. Isto também é feito semanalmente com um conjunto de encomendas que são geridas localmente. Depois trabalhamos um novo conceito, que é separar aquilo que é biológico e daquilo que é tradicional, e então criamos o biocabaz, o cabaz do Agroecological, que é produzido em modo biológico. E este também tem um custo ligeiramente diferente, mas que sai aqui também no âmbito do projeto Agroecological. No fundo, é proporcionar neste espaço um espaço onde o consumidor encontra produtos de origem local, onde não tem outro tipo de produtos a concorrer, incluir produtos locais frescos de época nos pratos e nos restaurantes das escolas, que é o grande objetivo, porque nós fazemos distribuição, que já vão ver a seguir, em algumas escolas. Ao nível do cliente final, também trabalhamos com o cliente final, fornecemos fruta para 10 escolas primárias locais, comercializamos alguns produtos para a restauração local e para o alojamento local e fazemos algumas ações de educação para sensibilizar o consumidor. Também participamos em alguns eventos diretamente para projetar o projeto. Para resumir aqui ao nível das cantinas, o que é que está a acontecer com as cantinas ao nível do município? Não é fácil transformar aquilo que é toda uma agricultura e todo um conjunto de práticas que se tem vindo a fazer ao longo dos anos e que tem mais a ver com as refeições normais, digamos assim, as refeições que neste momento nós o que fizemos foi criar um projeto piloto numa cantina piloto, numa das escolas básicas, onde servimos 50 refeições diárias. Isto com o projeto GeoFood 100% local. Tudo 100% local. E depois, para além disso, criamos um projeto de fruta escolar, distribuir fruta às escolas, e neste momento já vamos abranger quase todas as escolas do município. Vão ser 1.119 alunos que vão ser abrangidos a partir do próximo ano, que no fundo é duplicar aquilo que é a entrega de fruta aos alunos entre este ano que está a decorrer e o próximo ano. Neste momento estamos com 643 alunos que estão a ser servidos de fruta escolar, e estamos a falar da fruta que é para o lanche, normalmente o lanche da manhã ou da tarde, e são 2 peças de fruta que são entregues para uma alimentação mais saudável em todas as escolas. Nós somos membros do GeoFood Internacional, é um movimento internacional dos geoparques mundiais da Unesco, que também tem no nosso território 20 estabelecimentos aderentes, onde se comercializa os pratos GeoFood, que têm obrigatoriamente que ter uma componente muito forte de alimentação de base local. O que é que nós conseguimos com isto? Mais impacto a nível económico e social, melhores impactos ambientais, melhores impactos na saúde, mas também alguns impactos culturais. Os impactos na área económicos e sociais: promovemos a economia circular, contribuímos para o fortalecimento e o vínculo entre a alimentação e o território, e ajudamos a fixar as populações localmente. Alguns impactos ambientais: diminuir os custos com a distribuição, diminuir a pegada ecológica e o combate ao abandono das terras, que é para a agricultura ainda permanecer viva e com bastante vigor. Os impactos na saúde: estamos a seguir também o ciclo da natureza e tentar ter aqui produtos apenas sazonais dos produtores, que possibilitam uma maior variedade ao longo do ano. Por isso, temos que adaptar os consumos também àquilo que a sazonalidade também nos traz. Alguns impactos culturais têm mais a ver com a preservação das receitas tradicionais, que estão a ser repescadas e trabalhadas, e o reconhecimento da identidade alimentar. Ao nível de prémios, temos ganho alguns prémios a nível nacional, como o Food Nutrition Award, segunda menção honrosa, na categoria Sustentabilidade Alimentar, um prémio de empreendedorismo e inovação, em 2019, do projeto municipal, e em 2020 também um prémio na Planeteers Community, e um prémio ainda de terceiro lugar, pela lógica da sustentabilidade, em 2021. Algumas considerações finais. A produção local e a comunidade, e a restauração local e os itinerários são aquilo que nós também estamos a trabalhar, principalmente agora na parte mais final. Nós temos, ultimamente no projeto, estamos a implementar no âmbito da oferta turística uma oferta com itinerários locais, itinerários geofood. Nós depois poderemos ver aqui um bocadinho como é que isto funciona, mas também não tenho muito tempo para explicar. Na prática, nós temos então uma produção local com algumas boas práticas, com alguma gestão dos produtos, das variedades regionais, uma comunidade viva que assenta eventos e iniciativas, uma educação para a consciencialização social, e diversificar a nossa oferta através do reforço da identidade alimentar. Quanto aqui aos itinerários que eu já falei, no fundo o que é que nós fazemos? Ultimamente temos feito a descoberta das quintas agrícolas por via de um programa turístico. E as pessoas têm a oportunidade de conhecer o produtor, de provar os produtos e, para além disso, estar em visita guiada, contextualizada sobre a geografia do território. E isto é muito interessante. Trabalhamos os Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável, como a maior parte das pessoas aqui possivelmente o estarão a fazer, que é o nosso grande desafio mundial, e ficava por aqui. Se houver algumas questões, o projeto Agroecological agradece o convite e estou disponível para qualquer explicação adicional. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Antonio. This was, again, another very illuminating presentation for us. It is very inspiring to see organic farmers, local farmers being supported by local authorities. Thank you so much for taking the time today and speaking to us. So we have come to the last speaker today. The last speaker is Bettina Bergman Madsen from the city of Copenhagen. She's an award-winning chief procurement officer working for the city of Copenhagen since 2009, chair of the National Food Procurement Network and of the EU Public Food Procurement Network, hard advisor to the EU, WHO, and FAO and UNFSS champion. Her presentation is titled Sustainable and Healthy Public Food Procurement. Hello, Bettina. Welcome. The floor is yours if you're ready.
Yes, I am. And thank you very much for hosting me. Can you hear me? And hopefully see me?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm sorry, I'm on the phone, so I hope everything will go fine. Otherwise, let me know if it doesn't. I am, as you said, a chief procurement officer from the city of Copenhagen. And this picture I always start with because, as you heard from Malmö, when everything also has to be reflected in procurement, a lot of the things that was said in the Malmö presentation also goes for the city of Copenhagen. We have been on this journey of going more organic, being more sustainable, and also reducing CO2 footprint since 2001. So it has been a long journey for us. This picture often symbolizes me, I think, looking at the mountains when I have to do a procurement. I have to climb the mountain, and what is in my rucksack is all the political goals and the tools, the procurement law, and whatever we can do to try to implement our procurements or implement the political goals through our procurement. So let me have the next slides, please. Just a little facts about Copenhagen. This is our town hall. We buy food for 280 million a year, Danish kroners. Now actually it has risen to 320 million Danish kroners per year. To get it in euros, you have to divide it by 7. But it's a lot of money. So by doing this and by using your procurement, you can move the market. We serve around 70,000 meals per day, which are produced in 1,000 kitchens. So also when you do a contract, it is a lot of individual chefs that are cooking. They are the one ordering the different kind of food, and they are themselves menu planning. So to create the change on the plate, we have to work with the kitchen chef and to create the change from going from not that much organic to 90% organic meals. We have educated chefs. Instead of investing in more money for the meals, we just gave more money to education of chefs, how to cook differently, how to cook from scratch, how to reduce food waste, so that we can reach our targets within the budget. In the municipality of Copenhagen, we serve meals in daycare centers. We serve some in schools. We have after-school programs. We have staff canteens. We have nursing homes, and then we have homes for social vulnerable people where we serve food all on site. Next slide, please. So, as I am a procurement lawyer, I of course think that doing the procurement is one of the most important roles of all, because we are one of the keys, not the key, but one of the keys to bringing all the political goals into life. If we do not include them into the procurement, everything will stay as it was yesterday. But if we have the ability to implement some of the political goals into our procurement, we can actually make a huge difference, and without even affecting the people in the kitchens for doing something differently. And if they also do something differently, and then we cook delicious meals for the cities, for the citizens, and serve them, then finally we will make the real change once the food is eaten. So I only see my job completely done is when the food is served and we our citizens eat delicious food, and nothing has troubled the kitchen staff. Next slide, please. But to do this, to bring the policy into life, we need to work really closely together, because I'm just a lawyer, and then the people who know about economic. I do not know anything about how to cook differently. I do not know what changes are going on at the market. And I do not know what is happening in the kitchens. When do they want the deliveries? How do they want the deliveries to happen? So this is really important for me, that we work really closely together. We have the market dialogue before and after. So, and when we do all this, then finally we can make the changes. We can actually have the opportunity to see things happening and moving the food chain in the right direction. Next slide, please. In Copenhagen, we have very high political ambitions. Our politicians, of course, said yes to the Sustainable Development Goals, and I wanted to make sure that these are reflected into our procurement, the newest one we made. So all the targets that we have put into the procurement, we linked with the Sustainable Goals so that we can report back to the political level on how we are doing on this. We have 90% organic meals, and it is certified, so it is controlled by the government. When they can control the standard of the kitchen, they also control the organic percentage from the invoices. Then we are fighting to prevent food waste. We have asked for seasonality and diversity into the procurement. So we ask for fruit and vegetables in seasons. We ask for climate-friendly food. We put in a climate weight into some of our the food that we define as sustainable and healthy. We have a focus on the packaging. We want the packaging to be of PET so that it can be easily reused. Then we have a focus on trying to deliver in green vehicles. We have a no-flight policy on food. We are asking for sustainable soya, or at least that they have what do you call it, a policy about it in the firm. And then we also ask that if they are palm oil in our food, we want it to be sustainable and certified. We are asking for putting food that are fairly traded out for competition so that they will receive more points if they have food that are fairly traded and certified by this. And then we also work on looking at what food are more nutritious than others. So does it have a very good nutrition value? And then in the last tender I made, which was a potato tender, we linked the potato tender to teaching the kids about how it is to become a farmer, because it is so important that kids in this city also know how a potato grows, for example, and by that hopefully will gain the respect of the food. We incorporated into this procurement that they will receive a potato tender or a potato kit so that they can plant a potato and see it grow. So with all this, this is some of the tools you can use how to use procurement and how to put more into it than just buying food for the lowest price. Next slide, please. So here you see our new dietary guidelines in Denmark. They go for all meals, not just public meals, not just private meals, but for all. They are graded in different from children to grown-ups to elderly. And they say that we have to reduce meat enormously. We have to drink more water. And eat more vegetables and green greens. So have a focus on lentils and grains also. So to get the protein, nuts, and these things. So when I did that's when the climate weight came in, because when I did the last tender, then I tried to look at the dietary guidelines together with the university. They identified what food groups we should eat more of, and then they had a higher weight into the procurement so that the procurement reflected what we are going to eat more of in the years to come. Next slide, please. This is the description of how we try to do the climate weight. So the university, I identified the different food groups, and then in the project Food Trails, we are now trying to calculate what is the difference between how we eat now and how we're going to eat in the future, economically, seen from the economic view. Will it cost more or less? Will we have more burden on how to cook differently? Does it take a more effort in the kitchen to cook more green greens than to cook meat? All these things we are looking into, and hopefully very soon we will be able to share the results and also share a method of how you can calculate this so that we can all see, look at our budget. Right now it shows that there is no increase in budget to transform your meals from a more meat-heavy meal to a more plant-based meal that are fulfilling our dietary guidelines. And our dietary guidelines are also building upon to be more sustainable. So if we fulfill the dietary guidelines, we both fulfill the Eat Lancet report recommendation, but also the recommendations to be more CO2 neutral. So I think this could be a good method for all of us once we are finished doing the calculations to see if we can do it within our budget or even lowering our budget a little. Thank you. Next slide, please. So here is a little bit more about the potato tender I talked about. This is done within a project called Coach, where we are actually trying to show how we can make procurement for opening up our procurement for small and medium-sized enterprises and farmers. Often when we do tenders for big firms, for wholesalers, or somebody who can offer more to us. Here we try to say who are at the market and who would be willing to give a direct bid to some of our spendings. One of the people who reached out to us was the potato farmers, and this is where we then wanted to link it to the teaching of the kids how it is to become a farmer. So hopefully by this contract, where we wrote in that the farmers should also go online and telling the kids every fortnight, actually on YouTube, together with the kids growing the potato plant, like I talked about just before, when they get this potato kit where they can plant the potato will grow. The farmer will go online telling what is going on below the soil, so that the kids will know. Then hopefully they will gain a respect about the food that we grow, because they try to grow it at home themselves. We also link it with teaching material. We link it with math, with biology. So the teachers in the school, at the same time the kids are growing the potato, they can talk about, for example, what is an acre? How many acres does it take to grow potatoes to the school, and so on and so forth. This is just to show that procurement doesn't always just have to be procuring for the food. We can also link the food to teaching, and then actually suddenly we're implementing so much more knowledge, so much more respect about the food through our procurement, because without putting this into the tender, of course, then we would not have linked it that the farmer would teach. Maybe we would not have the same farmer that delivers potatoes to the school that also teach our kids. So this is some of the things that we value. Next slide, please. So I'm so lucky that I am a procurement lawyer that only works on food procurement. This is what I only do, and this is my specialty. So I do enjoy it a lot. But most procurement lawyers, they actually do many different kinds of procurements. They do road start one day, divers next, heavy machinery, and then food. So how can they know about the food system and the changes that we so badly need to help save our world? So to spread the knowledge about this, I created this National Food Procurement Officer Network together with the Environmental Ministry of Denmark. They are hosting it, and I am chairing it, so that we can share ideas on how to do green public procurement on food. In this network, we can inspire each other how to write the mandatory criteria that we need into the procurement, also how to gently support the market in transforming into becoming more green through the procurement. And this is one of the things that I do enjoy, because we see that the joint knowledge we get is growing rapidly. So this is very important for us. Together with the WHO, we wrote an inspiration material. Next slide, please. Where we share some of the ideas that we already have. It's kind of like the state of the art right now. What we know is, so how the things that I have put into tenders, some of the things that I learned from others that have put it into tenders. For example, Sweden, they value animal welfare a lot into their tenders. How can you do this through procurement? This is opened up in this teaching materials so that you can read about it. It's for procurement lawyers so that they can get inspired, and it's very concrete. It's really hands-on, and it's downloading for free. You have a link down here at the bottom of this slide. It's written together with the WHO, so they also support this tendency a lot. Next slide, please. So, and the final thing is that I was so inspired by doing the National Food Procurement Officer Network that I've been talking many years about creating this European Food Procurement Officer Network. And in a project called Best Green Map, we finally managed to do so. And we have had now 3 meetings in the European Food Procurement Officer Network, and everybody's that are writing food procurement and that are working as a public procurement professional are welcome in this network, so that we do not have to cross these mountains alone. We can do it together now, and we can share ideas. And it just, even though we are so different from each other sometimes, as you just heard through these presentation that has been today, we are so much alike though, and we want to go in the same direction. We all want to do changes for a better, more greener, more healthy and sustainable meals, public meals. So I really do believe that this European Food Procurement Officer Network can help us a lot. It is supported by DJ Sante, and I think it will, or I know it will continue after the Best Remap project stops. So in this EU Food Procurement Officer Group, we are also talking about the coming mandatory criteria for DJ Sante. So here we also listen to what the Commission might come up with as the criteria that they hope that we can follow in the future, that can support us to turn our meals into more green meals. Last slide, please. And here you have my contacts, and go on my LinkedIn page, because there will be some articles written, for example, about the diversity of fruit and vegetables, how we buy that in season, when they are in season, wherever they are grown, and how we ask for many different kinds of apples in season, so that we do not just have the ordinary one kind that are Pink Lady, Granny Smith, or Royal Gala or something, but we want the variety of fruit and vegetables so we can support the diversity. So thank you for listening to me, and I'm sorry that I'm on the phone, but I hope you managed to get my message through.
Thank you so much, Bettina. This was such an interesting presentation, and also thank you for taking the time from your traveling. I know it's not the most convenient time for you now.
I'm happy to be here.
This has been very interesting. All of these presentations today have been incredibly interesting. Thank you all for joining us today and telling us about these different practices. They have all emphasized a different point on how local authorities can contribute to organic food, agroecological food production, and how they can help establish short food supply chains. Now, this is the fun part, questions. We are now at the Q&A session. I will first read the questions at as in the order that they were submitted, written. And then if we have more time, we can take questions verbally if anyone wants to ask, but I am starting with Helen. Arzu Balkul asks, if you buy everything from scratch, does it mean that you need more staff for food prep, or you need the existing staff to work harder? How did you manage that?
Well, when it came to Avrupa'daki, the school, the kitchen was remodeled, and that was why it was chosen. So they had a lot of modern equipment put in and modern machines put in. So it made the work a lot easier for staff, because that is obviously something that we found, that where there is a more modern kitchen with modern equipment, it's a lot easier for staff to be able to cook from scratch. If you've got staff cooking in an older kitchen, in some of our preschools, they're almost got a normal household kitchen that they're trying to prepare food in. So there are limitations for them. So it helps to have well-equipped kitchens, which makes everything so much easier for the staff when they're working and putting good routines in place and that sort of thing. And it's a lot of it is down to planning. We've got staff, they sort of have their routines as like every morning they put the bread on for the the dough on for the bread, and in the evening they make sure they got things out the night before, or they're putting beans or pulses in soak. So it's all down to, a lot of it is down to planning, but also ensuring that they've got the equipment and the skills to be able to cook from scratch. Because a lot of kitchens or a lot of staff might not have the skills, which is why Bettina also mentioned how important it is with education, with the kitchen staff.
Thank you. This is also for Helen. How much of your organic food do you source from local producers? Do your policies encourage local organic production? Have you measured this? This question was submitted by Mustafa Marklet.
Okay, that's really difficult because, as we all know, in the EU, we're not allowed to specify that we want local produce. We can't specify local, but for example, all our dairy comes from a local dairy, or all the organic produce, and they obviously source from local organic farms. So we can't, and we try also to put in requirements, for example, when it comes to meat, animal welfare guidelines. So we use the Swedish ones, which were a bit stricter than the Swedish ones. So we try to ensure that we can try and ensure that we get Swedish products, but we can't always. We hope that by our work, by showing local producers that there is a market for organic produce, and we're not the only municipality in this region of Sweden that's working to increase their organic. Quite a few of the other municipalities in the region are also working actively, or have been working actively for quite a while, to improve their organic. So we feel that we're hoping that, and that is one of the reasons that the government set a national target by encouraging public sector catering to procure more organic. We're hoping that this will have a knock-on effect and encourage more farmers to become organic. But we haven't actually measured that, no. But I think at the moment, I think it's about 20% organic production in Sweden as a whole. It varies in different regions. Some regions it's a higher percentage than others.
Thank you, Helen. One more question for you. Hayat Bayturan asks, do you supply organic ingredients from markets, small producers, cooperatives? In what kind of chain or with what kind of policy do you buy from suppliers? I understand that you don't supply from local producers, is that right? What is
not directly, no. We have wholesalers that we sign agreements with because we have such large procurements. We procure so much food, and we're not talking about hundreds of kilos, we're talking about tons of food that we procure. So no, we don't go directly to the small scale, but it means that it's free for them if they want to supply our wholesalers that we have an agreement with, and then we get from them. So if it goes to a middleman, because it's an awful lot of work for a small scale producer to actually take part in a procurement process. There is a lot of paperwork that needs to be filled in. There's lots of requirements, as Bettina was going through, that producers have to fulfill to become a supplier for us. So sometimes it's seen as too much work for a small scale producer, but if they can get in through another way, then that's good. And this also comes down to cost. We have a tight budget in the public sector, so it's difficult for us sometimes to procure more artisan products and that sort of thing. So it's more we encourage them to go through our wholesalers, and if they become a customer with a supplier to the wholesalers, then we can get in their products.
Thank you. The next question is for Carla. Elizabeth Imbo asks, who is targeted with the public canteen, and how are you managing the public procurement question?
In France, for public canteen, municipalities are in charge of kindergarten and school for kids, so under 10, and also elders people. And if the high school and middle school are in charge by other administrative group, which is at the region area. So yeah, mostly about kids and older people. And we have different way of working on public procurements. We have a buying group for, I think it's 13 municipalities from the 28 who are Bordeaux Metropolis is in charge of buying food for them. So we're working directly on the public procurement. And for the other municipalities who are in charge of their own public procurement, we are helping them with training. We organize training to optimize the public procurement, and we work a lot on having more organic food, but also local food. Like we have a way of going around the rules to make sure that we can have more local food. I'm not an expert on the subject, but we have we have colleagues on some municipalities are really good to really procure regional food, and the work is really about a network between cooks to make sure that we can share this info and this knowledge between municipalities. But it's the beginning of the work. We're only starting.
Thank you. So this next question is from Maria Cadeias, and she says, "Hello everyone. I would like to ask to the speakers to whom it applies. How do the free trade deals signed at the EU and national level, which demand fair and non-favored competition, impose limitations on their goals of achieving locally sourced and short supply chains?"
I can jump in as a procurement lawyer here.
Thank you.
For me, these rules are here to ensure fair competition for everybody. And that's also why we have to be aware that we should open up our tenders towards small and medium-sized enterprises and farmers if they are willing to give a direct bid to the tenders. So this is how we should work with the procurement. We, of course, should also be aware if the kitchens can take more than one delivery. If the kitchen only have one employee that cooks for maybe between 40 and 100 people a day, then it's too much to have many different suppliers. Then they just need one supplier. So it's also, we have to take the kitchens into account. And here I completely agree with the other speakers that then it would be useful to use the wholesaler that then link with the small and medium-sized enterprises from the local area also. It also comes down to competition. If they are strong enough to survive the competition, and that is why we have it. So I do not see it as a burden or as a hinder for us to do these, to engage directly with them. But of course, it is more complicated from the public side, and it takes more time sometimes, and adjusting our large municipal documents to make them more simple.
Thank you. If anyone else wants to contribute.
Sorry, just go.
So shall I just quickly, I agree with Bettina. It's something that we have to live with, but I think it varies as well depending on the size of the municipality. I mean, we're all big. I mean, Bordeaux is a big region, Copenhagen's a big city, Malmö is a relatively big city in Sweden. But if you're looking at smaller municipalities, there are, I'm not saying ways to get around it, but there are ways of tailoring your requirements so that you can use local suppliers. For example, if you're a small municipality, you could maybe say that you want, for quality reasons, you want vacuum packed instead of frozen meat. So you want vacuum packed fresh meat, which means it would have to come from a local supplier. So these are sort of things that you can do. You can specify issues of quality. which is one of the reasons we use organic, because then it's a quality that you can specify. But you have to work with them and adapt. So there are lots of ways you can do that, to work with them, because as Bettina said, they're important. They should be in place to ensure fair competition. Carla.
Yeah, we are doing the same. In France, we have a law since 2018 who say we have to have 50% of the food procurement who's supposed to be quality food. And by quality food, the government means labeling, so organic, GPOs, etc. We have a lot of French label. And this law was quite interesting because all the municipalities and all the public procurement affairs have to think about it. But the barriers of local food it's a big subject in France. And a lot of cities, and Bordeaux is involved in that, are working in advocacy at the EU level on the food exception for procurement. Like to say, like, yes, you have to think about you can't say local for, I don't know, construction, but food is different. So yeah, we have a lot of advocacy on the subject, and the food trace project and this kind of thing, and also French network are really helpful for that, to think about it at the EU level. And currently we are trying to adapt with the law, and I think it's really successful in a way, because we have a lot of food procurement in Bordeaux Metropole, but also in other cities who are really trying to have local food and succeed in these matters.
I just jump in. I think one of the issues with when we talk about local food, and we have politicians in Sweden, or especially in Malmö, who are talking about local food, that they want us to procure more local food. There is no approved definition of what local is, and it says nothing about how something is produced either. So it could be something that is local, but it is produced using lots of pesticides, chemicals for animal treatment, that sort of thing. So it's important to look at the labels or the words that you use, because local could, I mean, if you're talking local for Malmö, it could be coming from Copenhagen. So it varies. So I think using terms relating to quality, as you were saying you're doing in France, I think that's better than using the geographical terms local, because there is no agreed definition. And it's really hard if you're working with procurement to use that sort of term, because it means nothing, basically.
Thank you so much. The next question is also to everyone who wants to jump in. Yusuf K asks, is there any funding provided by the European Union to support agricultural production?
That's unfortunately not my area. I don't know anything about this.
I don't know much, but I mean, there's the Common Agriculture Policy, which supports farming. I know that it takes an enormous chunk of the EU budget. So there's also funds for rural development. There's the LEADER program, which funds rural development, and there's loads of research programs focusing on different aspects of agriculture and food production and consumption. So yes, I guess is an answer. There is funding, but it's in various streams.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a difficult question, because the CAP is a really big amount of money for farming, but it's not really targeting sustainable farms. Currently, you have two pillars, and the first one is with the most funding is about if you have a big farm and you produce a lot, you have a lot of money, mostly, in general. And they have a lot of discussion about the next CAP, about the second pillar, about Green Deal. I don't know the name in English, but who wants to develop more agroecological farms, this kind of thing, but at European level. But yeah, it's also work we do on the cities in the advocacy part, like to have a more ambitious CAP and to really help small and sustainable farms at local level.
Aqui em Portugal existe vários apoios à agricultura, existe apoios para a competitividade, apoio à agricultura para a competitividade, mas também existe alguns apoios para os pequenos produtores. Estão a fazer, o que existe é uma separação entre o que é mais competitivo, digamos assim, para alguns grandes investimentos, mas depois tem apoios para pequenas explorações agrícolas e também para a diversificação das atividades agrícolas. No fundo, complementar apoio ao desenvolvimento rural. Mas o apoio propriamente dito à agricultura tem um conjunto de objetivos e de eixos, onde a criação, por exemplo, a instalação de agricultores, de jovens agricultores é potenciado. Os jovens que se querem instalar na agricultura podem ter apoio para os investimentos que vão fazer e também, principalmente, no apoio ao escoamento também. Esse apoio ao escoamento, existe o apoio às cadeias curtas, um pequeno apoio, mas tem que ser cooperativas, devidamente estabelecidas, devidamente legalmente estabelecidas. O Agroecological, o nosso projeto, não conseguiu, porque não tinha as propriedades registadas em nome da própria associação, por isso não conseguimos desencadear os fundos dos fundos europeus, não foi possível, foi um problema de elegibilidade das despesas. No entanto, temos este apoio do município. Pronto, o município logisticamente apoia com técnicos, paga aos técnicos, não é, para apoiar na animação deste projeto, e é uma forma também de apoiar, com uma política municipal, de apoiar. Mas fundos europeus, os próprios produtores, um a um, aqueles que eventualmente reúnam os requisitos de abertura das candidaturas, podem candidatar-se para as suas pequenas explorações agrícolas, para melhorar maior eficiência, modernização, apoio à maquinaria. Pronto, existe apoios sensivelmente na ordem dos 50%. Apoio a fundo perdido, alguns reembolsáveis.
Thank you so much. Well, another question for anyone who wants to jump in. This comes from two different people, but Raifa Khan and Ali Garipoğlu. This also shows one of the problems in Turkey, actually. They both, in general, ask how do you make sure if something called organic is actually organic apart from the certificate? Do you have any other extra inspection control systems other than the certification programs?
Bettina here says, yes, if we are in doubt about the certification, we write into the contract that we can, whenever we like, get it tested by an independent firm. If it is organic, then we have to pay for the testing ourselves. If not, then the firm that cheated us will have to pay for the testing and, of course, also take the consequences, because then that would be very bad. It is the certification that we use is third-party certified, so it ought to be sure. We have once sent some fruit for testing. It was organic, so we had to pay. But we had so much noise from our institution that thought that the fruit was too good looking to be organic. So to clear this unclarity up, we sent it for testing and it was organic. So everything was good. that's how we work with it. I don't know how the others work with it, but and that has been the only time we needed to test it, because otherwise we actually trust the certification a lot.
Yeah, same here. We trust the certification because it's third-party certification. So it's a supplier or a farmer, for example, who wants to be organic, they have to apply to an independent organization who come out and test, or who come out and they can just come out to a farmer and look through all their books to make sure that they've not been buying chemicals, for example, and they can go out and look anywhere on the farm, check on the animals, send food, send crops to be tested. So all that is put in place, and the farmer has to pay for that to be part of the system. So all that in place, we trust that system that's in place. So it's both the European system, which runs for through the whole of Europe, and also the Swedish system as well.
Thank you. I'll try to get one last question. All three speakers stated that their diet consists mainly of vegetables. Is one of the reasons for this to reduce methane gas emissions in livestock farming, or is it because vegetable nutrition is healthier? What has guided them in terms of sustainability?
I can go first. In our policy, we had the two main goals, which was to increase organic and then reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So there, primarily, we were looking at reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So reducing methane release. So we haven't taken meat totally off the menu. We have reduced it, but it's still there because the goal is not to turn everyone into a vegan. But the primary reason for doing it was to reduce our greenhouse gas emission. And as a bonus, we are increasing the amount of vegetables being served, increasing the fiber in the meals, which is better for everyone, basically. So it's the health benefits. They're important, but they weren't the primary. The primary was to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
I can just say, fully agree, Helen. Thank you. It's exactly the same in Copenhagen.
Thank you. Ok.
Sim, nós, para além de... Peço desculpa, sorry, Carla. Não sei se quer falar, esteja à vontade, pode falar. Sim. Depois eu falo a seguir. Please, Carla.
For us, we don't calculate the gas emission, carbon footprint emission, but I think the goal and the drive for the elected representative is about reducing climate change impact and also healthier food. I think it's both of them. And it's not a fight against cattle farms, but really improve and implement all the way of eating.
No nosso projeto, o Aroca Agrícola, está mais focado na questão vegetal, porque vivemos numa área onde existe muita procura pela carne e muito consumo de carne. E estamos, principalmente nesta zona de montanha, mas estamos a incentivar para criar práticas mais saudáveis também. E isto é muito importante para a saúde pública e para a saúde em geral, porque podemos juntar aquilo que é importante. Não somos contra também, pelo contrário, incentivamos também de forma normal o que é as produções de carnes de DOP, denominação de origem protegida, tudo aquilo que é importante também para manter a nossa economia, a nossa paisagens vivas, mas temos também este objetivo, principalmente este objetivo, que é trabalhar por uma questão de saúde alimentar, que possa contribuir para os níveis de bem-estar e de qualidade de vida, mas também prática saudável, não só a alimentação, mas também aquilo que é os estilos de vida. As pessoas comerem um pouco mais de fibras, a dieta mediterrânica é muito importante, e apostar aqui na questão da alimentação e da roda dos alimentos, obviamente. A boa alimentação faz com equilíbrio, não é? Pronto, e é isso que também queremos, obviamente que estamos a potenciar mais os produtores de vegetais, e transformar para uma agricultura cada vez mais biológica e mais sustentável, porque sabemos que isto também tem pegada ecológica e é isso que estamos a tentar contribuir para minimizar.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you all thank you to our speakers for these great presentations. I personally have learned so much today. Thank you so much for taking the time. I would also like to thank our great interpreters for this great session, and also would like to thank all the participants. Unfortunately, we don't have more time for the questions. I see that we still have more questions, but it's at the end of the time for us and also our webinar. I have just published an evaluation poll, an evaluation survey. We would be very happy if you take some time to join it, to answer the questions there. This helps us improve our meetings, events in the future, and also see how people make use of these kind of webinars, if people like it. I will take a few minutes for everyone to fill it in. Alexandra, if there is anything you would like to contribute.
Apenas agradecer a todos os presentes, nomeadamente aos nossos oradores, que representam municípios e não só, e aqui a Câmara de Aroca, o vereador António Carlos Duarte, por estar aqui presente e dar tão bom exemplo aqui para Portugal e para a Europa do que é que podemos implementar. Ainda é um longo caminho, percebemos que é muito importante a educação, e a educação a todos os níveis, na comunidade, aos produtores, aos agricultores, mas também nas nossas escolas, quer sejamos pais, professores e cozinheiros, não é? Portanto, todos eles são muito importantes de estarmos em contacto e demonstrarmos que é possível transformar, não é? Mas é um processo, é um caminho, não é? É uma mochila, é uma jornada, temos que olhar para uma montanha e vermos como é que podemos fazer esse trajeto para chegar lá. Mas é inspirador e espero que tenha inspirado todos os municípios, nomeadamente aqui em Setúbal, que temos aqui alguns representantes municipais da cidade, da Câmara Municipal. Portanto, será muito importante conhecer estes exemplos para implementarmos o nosso projeto em conjunto com a Associação Buğday. É isso. E grata a todos por participarem.
Thank you so much. Let me share the results of the poll. And that's it for today. Thank you again for joining us today, to everyone. And I hope to see you all in another event. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.